Speaker, thanks very much, and I rise to support this legislation. And I do feel sorry for the member for Manly. He's as the opposition spokesperson in this, because I'm pretty sure that he genuinely does support the roadmap, and he genuinely does, as his voters in Manly, I'm sure, supports the transition and the targets, which he is right, passed with bipartisan support in this place before I came back into it, but with a cooperative opposition who worked with the then government to give bipartisan support to the roadmap. And he said again in this one that he believes that the energy transition is imperative, or important, I think he might have said, and quoted some reviews. And towards the end of his speech, he said that the need to build projects faster is real. The problem he's got is that we will see, the member for Manly gave what I think, sure the Minister will acknowledge it was a fairly thoughtful speech, and I'm sure the Minister will address some of the specific points that the Shadow Minister, the Shadow spokesperson has made in his speech. The problem he has is that we will inevitably see in this speech a whole string of his coalition colleagues who will get up here and oppose every single renewable development. They will say that they are opposed to the transition, that they're opposed to renewable projects in their areas. They'll oppose to every wind farm. They'll be opposed to every transmission line. They'll be opposed to every solar farm. And some of them will even be in here essentially talking about how much they love coal and how they want to see that retained as the primary source. And that's the problem the member for Manly has, that the coalition is not acting with leadership on this, because we saw in this place when we had a motion on renewables and the transition previously, a number of Liberal members sitting with the government on this, but the whole National Party and a number of other Liberal members sitting to oppose that legislation. They are completely disjointed on this, and unfortunately what we see from that is that the member for Manly might be saying one thing to his constituents in Manly, and no doubt the member for Ryde is saying things to his, and member for North Shore, and out in Dubbo and out in even Goulburn, their members are saying something completely opposite. And so what we have, in fact, that the coalition government left us was, yes, a roadmap, but from there we had complete paralysis. We simply weren't seeing projects which were getting to the approval stage. We're getting heaps of companies, and this is actually one of the problems which I acknowledge, we're getting heaps of companies going out there and doing investigations and proposals for things, but then they're all sitting in that process or sitting bogged down in the process of going through varying levels of quality of public communication and consultation, and I absolutely acknowledge that. I've seen the member for Manly's calm speech that he gave here, and I've also seen his press release, which has got a very opposite feel to it, because it talks about, it says, the government's about to strip away community consultation on projects. Nothing could be further from the truth. No project which is identified in this goes without community consultation. It still goes through the process. In fact, if you think about it rationally, and I see the member for Upper Hunter in here who will get up and absolutely contradict the Shadow Minister when he gets up and speaks on this. Yeah. But if you go through this, if you adopt a process like this that the Minister is proposing here today, then what it will very clearly do is enable the community to focus on those projects, those few projects which do have priority, rather than being worried about a whole range of other ones which are just sitting in a queue waiting, and which may or may not be considered as part of the planning process. So it will enable the community to focus on projects which are of state significance and which are going to contribute to the roadmap and to achieving it. So I would contend that this bill is actually about making it clearer to communities what's going to happen. Yes. It's about moving the process along and achieving our renewables objectives, which, as a member from Manly told us several times, have bipartisan support. Now, that is really important, because as we saw today in question time, and from the release that we've seen of the default market offers in the energy space just today, that we are finally starting to see default market offers come down. There's a long way to go because of the input of renewables into the system. And that's the way we want to see it going. Labor's vision for the energy system in the future is that we have a renewable energy system, a clean energy system after 2050, which enables us to use more power for industry, which enables us to use more power for things which produce jobs and benefit our economy, because it'll be clean power being produced cheaply. The rival vision that we saw from the federal opposition leading to the last election was just such a contrast. They wanted our economy to pay more for their power in the long term, much more, and they also wanted to produce a lot less. So what that meant was a contracting of industry, a contracting of jobs right around New South Wales, because they didn't have access, and they wouldn't have had access to that clean renewable power that Labor's vision is sending us towards. And that's the really fundamental difference. And it's very sad to see the coalition being pushed, flip-flopping away, being pushed by One Nation into in getting out there and listening to the loudest and most wild voices. And that is all we see now from the Nationals in particular. They're out there just chanting along with the loudest and angriest voice. They're not listening to their communities anymore. And we know that because we've seen consistent polling that shows us that the majority of people in regional New South Wales, including in the reses, support the transition to renewables. They support the work that's going on to get our shift to renewables, including in their areas. So in the most recent polling undertaken on behalf of Farmers for Climate Action, we saw that 55% of people in New England supported shifting to renewable energy. 60% in Central West Arana, 60% in the Hunter, 68% in Illawarra. The interesting thing about this polling, consistent between this poll and the year before when they did this, is that that absolute majority of people support the transition. They support renewables. They support them being developed in their communities, even though they are reses as well. But they believe, because of the loud voices and the loud naysayers that are out there, including a number of Nationals members in this place who before the change of government were actually out saying how wonderful the transition was, they believe, interestingly, and the polling shows that even though they support the transition, they believe that there's minority support in their community. And that goes down to this sort of loud, angry voices, and to be quite blunt, the bullying that goes on in this space. We've seen farmers who are complaining about their children being targeted at schools when they host renewables. It's not acceptable. And we saw an article in The Land some time ago, which I've presented in this place before, which says the Nationals need to listen to all farmers, not just to those loud voices who oppose anything happening in their areas. And that's exactly the same. So the opinion of the majority of residents, as I said, the majority of residents in the Hunter support the transition, but the same poll shows that they think that only 40% of their fellow residents support it, which is very interesting. Best option for Australia's future energy system. An overwhelming majority in each of those areas think that solar, wind and hydro are the best options for their future. Those are important things to remember, particularly if you're one of those members who's out there trying to join the One Nation bandwagon of railing against everything. Now, I get that if you're in an area where you're going to see a transmission line, that's not particularly great. But we know that. I'm pretty sure that people who were near coal mines when we were reliant just on coal probably weren't particularly pleased to see the pit developing near them either. It is unfortunate that someone has to have their view or their amenity suffer because of this, but it's for the greater good of the rest of the community. And it is an absolute furphy to say that you can't conduct agriculture while you also have renewables. Grazing under solar panels is possible. Speaker, could I request an extension of time?
The member requests an extension of time. Is the extension granted? Yes. Yeah, granted.
Thank you. Grazing under renewables is absolutely possible, and I visited the site for the Blind Creek Solar Farm near Lake George recently with the Premier, with the work starting on that solar farm, a solar farm which has had great community support and where they will operate a grazing property on the same land that the solar panels are on. It is absolutely possible to crop in areas where there is power lines to continue to operate a farm. It is absolutely possible to continue to run farming operations near and around wind turbines, and in fact, the wind turbines, as we all know, offer quite strong revenue streams, which help farms which were previously pretty marginal to actually get revenue streams which make them more marginal. Absolutely acknowledge that neighbours need to be included in those benefits, as do communities, and those are the sort of things which we continue to work on. I guess one of the things that always annoys me about the opposition in this place is they come in at question time, and they come in at things like this, and they seem to only think that the thing that they're looking at that time, they seem to present as if it's the only thing going on. And we know that, in fact, the government has a whole range of things going on in this space to try and promote renewables. And I want to, in my hat as Minister for Skills, highlight the fact that we are also, at the same time as rolling out the RESs, working very hard to make sure that we're developing the skills in regional communities, so that the long-term benefit for many of these regional communities is to have skilled workforce which is developing alongside the rollout, to make sure that as best we can, we are getting workers who live in the local area working on these projects. So we are working, and my portfolio is working with Minister Sharp's portfolio and with the federal government about enhancing electro-technology facilities in regional New South Wales and in the RESs, in making sure that we're offering those more opportunities to undertake those skills, in making sure that we're working to try and make those jobs more accessible, and because we recognise that for some, for instance, if you're building a solar farm, that job might not go for the full length of an apprenticeship. So you need to have a mechanism to carry, like a group training company or something like that, to actually help that apprentice to carry through to multiple projects. So those are the things we're working on to make sure that communities see the workforce benefit out of these projects in the long term, as well as playing their part in the transition to renewables, which of course means that farmers and industry and so on get affordable energy for the long term, affordable energy that helps them to guarantee their security for the long term as well. And that's those attitudes that I talked about before around the transition are borne out in other polling as well. The polling undertaken by the Lowy Institute, for example, shows that the vast majority of people in Australia and in regional and rural Australia support the transition to renewables. A very small minority think that we should be reliant on coal as our major source, and yet you're hearing from some coalition members and sort of parroting the One Nation lines that that's the only way for the future and that it's shorter. I mean, Matt Cole-Canavan, as I've described him before, the federal Nationals leader, he can't get out of his head that he thinks it's the only way to go, when in fact we know that it's the most expensive, apart from large-scale nuclear and small-scale nuclear, of the sources that we have at the moment. That's the most expensive way to get future energy. Figures a couple of years out of date, but $5,757 per kilowatt for coal, as opposed to wind $3,200, solar $1,344. So the work that we're doing to make the transition sustainable in New South Wales is really important, and helping us to ensure that we can prioritise some projects which contribute the most is a sensible way to ensure that we are breaking the logjam that was left to us by the previous government, which frankly just didn't see anything being approved. Yes, there is right and wrong places for projects. I absolutely agree with that. I've supported a number of solar projects in Monero electorate. I've supported a number of wind projects in the Monero electorate around Lake George and around the Boko Rock wind farm. There's some others which I think are in scenic protection zones which I don't support, but they are one only actually. But so there is right and wrong places, and that's why you have a planning process to assess those things, and that's what this bill does. It helps to prioritise and make sure that we're going through and getting this. And I come back to a figure I've used before. When you hear the fear campaign about renewables taking over farmland, we could power the whole of Australia's energy needs, all of it, with solar in New South Wales, and if we did that, we'd use just 0.15% of the land in New South Wales. It is not a threat to farming, it's an opportunity for all of us.